Welcome, friends, to Kuvera Insights, where we will speak with leading experts from across the personal finance spectrum to glean insights on how to best manage your household economy. Today, we have two very special guests with us who have seen personal finance and investing grow in India for the last, 15, 20 years. To introduce our ladies first. So first we have Deepti. She is the personal finance editor at Mint newspaper. She's been writing about personal finance for over 15 years and focusing on insurance and pension as sectors. And she heads a stellar team that brings out the best in personal finance coverage. We also have with us Mr. Bala, who probably needs no introduction. He's been one of the stalwarts of the mutual fund industry. He's the CEO of Aditya Birla Mutual Funds, one of the largest fund houses. He was also the head of AMPI from 2016 to 2018, so was instrumental in the mutual fund Sahi Hai campaign, if everyone knows about that. So we have two people who have very good histories in personal finance in India. So we expect this to be a great conversation. So to get started, I'll start with Deepti. So what are you seeing, right? Like this past 3-4 weeks has changed pretty much everything that we knew about personal finance. What do you hear from your readers?
It's been a roller coaster ride. In fact, it's worse than that. It's a roller coaster ride where you don't know when you will stop, when the whole dizzying atmosphere will end for you. But the one thing that we've noticed is that everyone's beginning to realize the importance of having an emergency corpus. Investors are clearly spooked. We do a series in Mint now, in Mint Money, where we look at the CEOs and we're asking them how they manage their money. We're looking at their asset allocation and if they're holding more cash. And some of them are actually holding more cash. In fact, all of them, most of them would have an emergency corpus of at least 6 months. So,
Right.
In terms of what we are hearing, even when we talk to planners and sort of ask them what is the main concern of their clients, job cuts and salary cuts are the two big ones. And what do you do when that's something on the horizon and that that's something that will sort of come home sooner than later is, you sort of scramble together some sort of an emergency net. And that's really the big focus that we see a lot of people are occupied with at the moment. I don't think emergency corpus was something that people focused on earlier, especially when the going is good. You look at investments more from a perspective of what's in it for me, how much return will I make. But the whole concept of looking at personal finance as this money box, where you look at insurance and emergency fund as the stepping stone, I think that's hitting home now, and it's very real.
So it's very, very true also, because this the crisis we are in, it's very difficult to see where the end of the tunnel is. So people in general should get more risk averse. People should, even if I think I'm not in a job that I can lose, but I would still want to preserve cash. And we are seeing this in the startup world, where investors and startups themselves are focusing on increasing their runway. Because you don't know whether this is going to be a 3-month phenomenon or a 6-month phenomenon, right? So, continuing on the same line, Bala, you've seen the global financial crisis. You've also seen the dot-com crash. How is this different, or is it different? How should a investor contextualize a move like this, contextualize an environment like this, given on what has happened before and what can happen going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a completely different, Gaurav. I think personally I've seen 1992 security scams, and then bubble in 1999, and then we saw 2 recessions during the same period. After that, for a 2-year period, I saw recessions. And then 2008 crisis and 2013 when the yields had shot up globally. I think all these crises we have seen, but of course this time is different, completely different from what we have seen in the past. Only for one simple reason that one is related to the health, and second is it's affected the whole global economy, and a significant slowdown that we have never witnessed in the past. And fourth is the policymakers, when they come and pump prime the economy, normally you see the growth coming back, confidence coming back. And this time around, the money that has been pumped in by Fed is much more than what we had pumped in post 2008 crisis, and still the expectation of GDP growth is not coming back to normal. Coming back to the global accepted level of roughly about 3.5%. I think now it's going to be negative growth. Second is the job loss. While I've seen in 1999 bubble had huge job losses, but again the industry got the lessons very quickly and then came back. There was a time of course, the investment phase. I think if you look at 10-20 years back, huge amount of investment was needed, huge amount of automation was coming on board. Therefore, the spending continued to remain high. But this time around, having now built the economy to where we are today, with the complete digital economy, I think incremental capex from companies probably will not be coming forth big time. People will be cautious about expanding their business model. So therefore, it can lead to some bit of job cut. There is no doubt on that. But having seen this, I think the way I look at it, these scenarios we have seen in the past, but of course, anything that is there doesn't last for beyond 6 months to 1 year, and then it starts coming back. So that is why I think when I saw it in 2009 crisis, we all of us felt, are we in the right industry to actually have a job? I think, including as mutual fund players, started thinking 2008 crisis, such a sharp fall we have seen. Is it all worth being in the financial sectors? I think that question which was coming everywhere after the Lehman Brothers collapse. I think if we saw that maybe the apprehension would have been for about 6 months or so, and then after that, once things start settling down, when the regulators started coming together and then start taking action to get their sentiment back to normal, we saw it the government fiscal spending. We saw it through central bank cutting interest rates and making the liquidity cheap. Then things starts coming back. I mean, we will probably get into that kind of scenario. While the fear is right, I'm not saying.
What's the how do we get out of this, right? I mean, what changes? Like personally, what do you think needs to change? And I would love to get your views, Deepti, on this as well. How does that confidence? How does this investor confidence come back?
So the way I see, Gaurav, is investors' confidence. Frankly, if you ask me, the investors' confidence is still not. I think one of the questions that I get even today after such sharp fall, while what Deepti mentioned about emergency fund, which is obvious to have that kind of thought process, but the number of queries that I've been getting for the last 2-3 weeks after having seen such a sharp fall in the market, is it something which the market is actually discounting the worst much faster than what one would have expected. Where from this is coming? The market fell by almost 40%. So that's something which also made this time around the number of queries that was coming was actually is about should I add at the lower level or should I wait for more time to? You'll not me a very small investor who is a fixed income investor. Suddenly he felt that is it the time for me to shift some portion of the money into the equity, given the fact that it has fallen quite sharply. So that's one part of it. That's I think reality, which I would say.
So,
and second is,
sorry, go ahead, Deepti, please.
Second is what could also boost the confidence is actually the way the policymakers are looking at addressing this whole issue by pump prime the economy. I think India we not seen much. I think as I mentioned earlier, global it has happened. But India will, I think, the Bank of India has been making it so attractive. Overall liquidity in the system point of view, where they're going to make the interest rate so low. I think eventually in the next 6 months time frame, I think even the banks, once they come back on the lending side, it can actually boost the confidence of the spender. I'm not even about the savers. I'm talking about the spenders. Once that starts coming back, we would probably see the investors' confidence also coming back to normal. I think Deepti, you are mentioning.
But Bala, so when we looked at SIP data, of course, people who already have invested, the redemption pressure is not so much in the equity portfolio. But when you look at SIP stoppage data, new SIPs are not really coming in. So, do you think that this is a temporary phenomenon? And, once we start seeing, there are two aspects, right? One is the whole macro, where we look at how the government reacts to this. What is the stimulus package? What's the real job loss scenario, which we will find out, which will unravel itself in very soon. And second, of course, what I feel what really instills confidence in an investor is going back to the basics of personal finance, really. Your money box. If you have an emergency corpus, if you've been investing, keeping your goals in mind, which means you've got yourself in the right asset. So if your horizon is 10 years and 15 years and you've put your money in equity, you're not really bothered about what's happened now. You're not really bothered about the bloodbath in the market. But a lot of investors have not got that right. So two questions. One is to Bala and the other is to Gaurav. One is, Bala, do you think it's a temporary phenomenon and investors will come back and, SIP is something that will sort of resume shortly? What is the time frame that you foresee?
Yeah, I think interesting, Deepti. I think the way I analyze the whole of last year, I think since 2018, financial market came under attack. I think we have been going through that crisis of confidence in the lending market, especially around the NBFC space. Clearly, we saw some bit of dip in the SIP subscription. I really look at the SIP new subscriptions. The SIP new subscriptions used to be somewhere around 20 lakh per month for the industry, and then the ratio of expiries roughly used to be about 30%. Okay, everyone expiries actually somebody signs up for 3 years, after that doesn't renew, therefore that goes out of the system. So and then somebody actually come and actually looking at the market volatility, they come and stop it. At the time, industry also was proactive in giving a pass as one of the, I think, where income is going to get impacted. Maybe you don't need to cancel your SIP. You take a pass for about 2 months or 3 months, and then you come back, restart your same SIP. You don't need to do a registrations. All such things happened. Having seen that, I think if you look at while what you said is the cancellation ratios are high, but also one need to look at this from the context of lockdown period. I think March is lockdown period, people are not reaching out. So far, the SIP, if you look at online versus offline, 60% of the SIP subscription.
Also, direct versus regular. Have you done any analysis of direct versus regular?
Yeah, I think the 90% of the SIPs come through the regular plan, through the distributors driven. Within that, roughly about 60% comes through offline, physically sign up things, and 30% comes in the online. And online registrations just start picking up the last 1 year. Still, the majority of the people are not used to dealing with the mutual fund on an online platform. I think as we start, especially in the COVID, the lockdown have given lesson to a lot of people to start using the app, to start using the digital platform of mutual funds and other players like you, like Grow, etc. It's something which I think, in my view, would probably change the way I think SIPs are getting onboarded. So I think seen that most of them have started accepting SIPs is a way of investing for long-term goal, as you rightly mentioned, about 10 years. If you see the last 2 years, the number of period for which SIPs are registered for perpetuity. I think they don't sign it for 1 year or 3 years, sign for perpetual. So that kind of things, it of course remains. I think
Do you think that
canceling.
change now? Will people want to put an expiry on how much they want to offer, how long they want to invest? This whole perpetuity, will that change now? Do you think, or
Don't
do you think we'll come back to normal where we were? Are we going to resume from there, or do you see any investor behavioral change post COVID?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I'll
we are.
talk about the just one second. I'll talk about the just the perpetual one, because I think we started offering perpetual SIPs back in 2018, right? And we don't see any more queries of people coming in and saying, "Hey, I want to put an end date." I think by and large, investors like the fact that they don't have to go on and keep on renewing. So that fill it, shut it, let it run, let it be a long-term investment plan. That is fairly ingrained. And more than that, at least maybe for a lot of online platforms, what also helps is that pause and stop are functions that we provide very easily. So because people know that they can stop and pause whenever they want, they don't feel like they're missing out by not putting an end date.
Okay. But Gaurav, what do you think this means for direct platforms, direct fintech platforms?
Right.
Do you think that when there is a blip in the economy, and this is a black swan eventually,
Yep.
events like these, do you think investors would seek the comfort of a professional, of an advisor, instead of being savvy themselves? So, how do you think direct platforms will change post-COVID, and how do you plan to sort of tackle investors
Very,
going
very,
on?
very interesting question, because see, effectively the question that the way we frame it is not all online platforms are the same, right? So at the end of the day, you have to decide whether you're a transactional platform or an advisory platform. To your point, yes, just because you're doing it online does not mean that there is no advisory that is associated with it, right? Online, we can do a lot more nudges. We can, kind of create very specific nudges that act at very specific points to improve that investor's long-term outlook, right? So, simple example that I've given many times before also is that if you can delay, so a lot of times this whole act of stopping a SIP or the whole act of selling when the market is down is just because you're emotionally charged. You've seen some piece of bad news, you've seen your savings down 20-30%, and you want to take action because that's how you take control. That's how we have always known of taking control, is by taking an action. At that point, if you can delay that decision by 10 minutes, by 15 minutes, by 1 hour, a saner mind will prevail, right? And it's very easy. There have been plentiful studies that have been done over the last 15 years on the micro nudges. So we do believe that that direct platforms have to evolve. If you say that the only thing you're bringing to the table is an online experience, that we will help you transact online, then you're shortchanging your investors. It has to be more around goal planning. It has to be more around very specific advisory needs, whether it be tax related, whether it be kind of investment behavior related. And that's the way to go forward. Now, when an event like COVID-19 happens, right?
But is there a regulatory line that is very clearly demarcated for direct platforms? I'm talking about the bigger ecosystem. I'm
Right.
saying that companies that were direct only, do you think those will now tend to fritter away? Will people want platforms that also sort of help you take the decision? The nudges that you're talking about, it's essential now more than anything else. So, there were a lot of business models that were sort of building up just by enabling transaction. Do you think that model is now going to go away and you will have?
So, I mean, see, financial services is a very weird ecosystem, right? Models don't go away, right? I mean, if you look at banks, you have 5 large banks and then you have a tail of small banks. If you look at AMCs, right, you have 6 AMCs that capture about 65% of the market, but then you have 42 AMCs in the country, right? So financial services tends to not be a winner-take-all market. I mean, that's the larger theme. But to your point, yes, investors will seek out platforms that do provide more advice than just transaction enablement. And I think it would be good to, if Bala, if you can tell us how you think this whole regular versus direct online versus offline, at least thematically, within Aditya Birla, how do you guys see this playing out in the next 6 to 7 years? And there can be learnings which can go both ways, right? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things that IFAs are doing right that we have to learn from, and there's probably some things that we are doing right that the IFAs should learn from.
See, well, I think interestingly, while the direct versus the regular plan comes as part of the discussion more frequently, I think this time around, when the market has fallen so much, I think most of the investors who have been coming either in the direct or the regular, I think the constant engagement with either the AMCs directly or the RIAs directly or with the distributors directly, I think the need of that was very, very high. I think I could see it. Even the investors who have been dealing with the mutual fund for a very long period of time, everyone needs some kind of handholding, needs some kind of advice. Right. The common question which was coming from everyone is, what should I, as I mentioned earlier, should I invest in equity, should I invest in debt, or should I invest from debt to equity, or should I hold cash? All such kind of things are there. So this is where I think I think that the reason why, despite direct plan is about 5-year-old plan, is still almost 6 years old plan. Still majority of the 80s money coming through either through distributions or an RIA is coming from the fact that beyond certain amount, people do want some kind of advice. If it's a small amount, paying with 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees, and I don't need that advice. I can just do on my own without engaging as an RIA or I think once the size of your investable surplus, once it goes beyond certain extent, I generally have been seeing they need some kind of advice. And frankly, AMCs, while management companies, we also have some kind of servicing team, and frankly, we are not built any advisory team under the because we always work through RIAs, the MFDs, and of course we do a handholding of customers who are beyond certain size dealing with the mutual fund directly. So therefore, I would assume in this market volatility, I think Gaurav it's direct versus the regular has been part of the discussion, and as I mentioned earlier, it's about 6 years old product offering that has been done. I think times like today, where there's an extreme amount of volatility and nobody knows which is the direction in which the market is going, I think clearly the need of the advice comes into play, either through an RIA or through MFD. While the AMCs also have been offering direct product, I think we have built capability more on servicing and not, so to speak, in giving the asset allocation kind of drive. Maybe the way I see is, I think most of the people now beginning to realize to remain successful in investing in the mutual funds and the market in general, the best way actually we can do is through the asset allocation kind of model. Even the mutual funds have started offering asset allocation kind of product, where even RAs now started tagging along with them. And that probably is the model in which I think could probably see it evolving. Having said that, I would still assume 70 to 78% of the MF industry's AEM would still be coming through a mix of MFD and RIA, and is no more commission-based model. Commissions have, thanks to the regulation, commissions have been reduced by, not commission, the expenses have been reduced quite substantially. And I think definitely the customers, investors would still would deal with advisors. At the end of the day, his hard-earned money cannot be put at risk by doing on his own. When you do on your own, the impulsive decision generally is very, very high. When you do through the advisors, the impulsive decision generally gets reduced. And therefore, I would assume while we will see some trend change, of course, the middle change anyway has to happen anywhere that happens. We will not see a big shift happening towards direct.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. I think behaviors take time to change, and advice is advice. I think as long as they're getting the right advice, as long as they're getting good advice, probably everyone in the ecosystem is happy. So there we go. The past 3 to 4 weeks has indeed changed a lot about personal finance, and also about every one of our household budget. And we all have to adjust to the new normal. So it was a great conversation. Again, thanks Bala and thanks Deepti. This conversation though is not over yet. We have to discuss with them about investor behavior and a lot of other things. So this conversation will continue. Stay tuned. We'll come back with Bala and Deepti again, and we'll try and glean a few more insights from them on another episode of Kuvera Insights. Thanks for watching and stay tuned. Bye.